Hey everybody, welcome to Hannah L. Clark's Writing Gems. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Hannah L. Clark. I am the author of the young adult fantasy adventure series called Kabogoth. My first book in the series is going to be released on May 13th through Cedar Fort Publishing, and we're really excited about that. I've been missing for the last 2 weeks, I think, because it just went to the print, which we're really excited about because we wondered if it would happen. You'll know what I'm talking about when you get there. It gets to that point. Excuse me. So anyway, to look for that in May 13th. Today's Writing Gem segment, I believe, is number 13. You check above because I'll put the right one up there. I just haven't checked yet to see which one I'm on. But anyway, today I wanted to talk about finding your voice as a writer. Now, this is a really kind of slippery topic in the industry, because a lot of people in the industry will tell you that an author's writing voice is something that can't be taught. And I believe that. I believe that somebody else can't teach you how to find your own voice. But I do believe that it can be learned. And there's a lot of these little kind of self-discovery journeys that you have to take as a writer, and this is one of them. And those are kind of my favorite ones, is where you have to really dig deep within yourself to discover and figure out and develop these skills in your craft. So what is a voice? Your voice as a writer is the thing that sets you apart from everybody else. I once heard a quote, and I'm gonna slaughter it. It won't be accurate, but I believe it was Stephen King that said it, or someone that was as big as him, because I remember it impacted me that much because of who had said it. But they talked about that your weirdness is your strength. That part of yourself that you've hidden all of your life because you were just too afraid to show it to everyone else is your strength. That's what sets you apart, and that's what makes you unique within an industry like this. And I believe that. I think that is 100% true. However, at the same time, exposing that weirdness is one of the scariest things that I have ever done in my life. Ask anybody from my upbringing and they would probably tell you that they would have never, ever, ever believed that I was going to become a fantasy author. And I actually still get weird looks or surprised looks when I tell people that I am a fantasy author, because they usually expect me to be like a much more serious academic sort of writer. And that's cool. But I embraced my weirdness, and here I am. So discovering your voice is what sets you apart from everybody else in your writing, in your style, in your tone, in your way of telling a story, in your use of language, in your the way that you compile sentences, the way that you organize sentences and structure them. That's your voice, and it's totally 100% unique to you. Now, you're going to find super flowery voices in literature. You're going to find, like, what's his name? The guy who wrote The Old Man and the Sea. Dang, Hemingway. There you go. His voice is very concise and very, like, rhythmic in his writing. You're going to find snarky writers, you're going to find really funny writers, you're going to find people who have very sweet, sincere voices, very pure voices. There's all kinds. As many different writers there are as many different voices. Some are stronger than others because the development has come along further, or, some people it's just easier for them than others. But, so that's what your voice is. It's just what sets you apart from everybody else. It's your uniqueness, your weirdness. So how do you discover this voice? Where do you start? Now, I believe that there's a million different ways to do this. These are just the things that I have found helpful and that have helped me strengthen my own voice. The first step, I believe, is you got to figure out what genre you want to write in. Because that genre, like I talked about back in my Resonance segment, it has its own set of language and it has its own set of rules. And when readers come to that genre, they're expecting you to kind of play within those rules. And you're, of course, allowed to break them, but you got to know the rules first. That's a big rule in writing is you got to know the rules so that you can break them later on, and you need to break them with credibility. That's the biggest thing, and you can't break them with credibility if you don't know them really well first. So first establish what genre you want to write in. From there, I would really submerge yourself in the genre and really study the other really strong voices within that genre and see what they're doing right. Try and identify the distinctness between each, what sets each one of these authors apart, and what they're doing to establish their own voice. Once you've done that, you got a good start. You know what genre you're going to be writing in, so you know the rules that you're writing with, and then decide what kind of a writer you want to be within that genre. Do you want to be a funny writer? Do you want to be a really sweet, sincere writer? Do you want to be an optimistic writer? Do you want to be a pessimistic writer? Do you want to be, there's so many options, and really the way to discover that is you've got to go back to yourself. What kind of a person are you? What impression do people get from you when they speak with you? And if you don't know, start asking the people around you. Ask especially the people that are the closest to you, that see you in your rawest form, with no censors up, with no filters on. They see you at your most vulnerable. That's really important, at your most vulnerable. They're going to be the ones that are going to be able to help you identify those characteristics and those traits that are uniquely yours. If you're still not able to really identify that after speaking with the people that are closest to you, this is one of the things that I found the most helpful in my own life. And going back to the fact that I'm a dyslexic author, I had a really hard time in school growing up. It was really hard and really frustrating because I've always known I wanted to be a writer, and so to have this kind of roadblock standing in my way has been a constant struggle. But one of the things that dyslexics have a really hard time with is their motor skills, which makes their penmanship, like getting the hang of writing, really difficult. And so my handwriting growing up was atrocious. It still is kind of sad, but it's much, much better. But it was just terrible, and my grades were constantly affected by this because my teachers couldn't read what I was writing because it was just so hard for me to form the letters. So one of the ways that I decided to overcome this is I started keeping a journal every day. I would write in it every single day. And I did this because I wanted to improve, but also, keep a record, because little girls like to write diaries, right? But the great thing about a journal is you aren't thinking about what anybody else is going to think of what you're saying, because hopefully nobody else is going to see it, right? So you just write, and I would just write, and without any care of grammar, without any care of spelling. I didn't worry about all the things I had to worry about in school, and I just wrote. And that was really great because that kind of writing is called stream of consciousness writing, which means it's just raw writing. It's so important to ask the people who see you at your raw form, your most vulnerable. That's what journal writing is. It's your most vulnerable form of writing because you're not worrying about everything else and you're being hopefully 100% true. Now, if you haven't kept a journal your whole life, this can be a really painful process because you have to force yourself to not think about all the rules that you've been kind of cramming in all your life. You have to just let yourself write. You have to let yourself be wrong in the rules. You just can't worry about that. You just write your thoughts. And that is a great way to really not only help you identify your voice, but to really help you practice your voice. Because like I talked about earlier I don't know if I wrote it in a post or if I talked about it in an earlier gem, there's this idea that you have two sides of your brain. There's the creative side as writers, and then there's the very technical side as writers. And you need them both, but you can't use them at the same time. Because the technical side is going to kill the creative side, and the creative side will kill your technical side. So that's the same kind of idea with the stream of consciousness writing. Your voice is a very creative thing, and you can't be worrying about the technical side of things while you're trying to develop your voice. So if you still haven't gotten past, or still haven't kind of really haven't had success identifying your voice up to that point, journal writing is a great thing. And what I would do is I would just start writing for like say a good 3 weeks to a month-long period, don't look at any of the writing that you do, just write for at least 3 pages every single day. And then, after you've given yourself a little bit of a break from that writing, go back and start studying it. Really look at your voice, really study the traits that are within that stream of consciousness writing, and that will help you to start to understand what your traits and your uniqueness and weirdness is as a writer, and those things that will set you apart. So that's what I did, and I believe that, you know, when I went through college, the thing that they talked about most, my professors talked about most with me, was how strong my voice was, and that was the kind of the thing that really encouraged me to keep on going, despite the fact that I had all these other problems because of my dyslexia. It was the fact that I had a really distinct voice, and that was something that was often so hard to develop. And I credit that to writing in a journal from a very young age, and keeping it really faithfully throughout my whole life. I still write at least 3 pages a day to stay on top of that voice. After that, and this is the final thing that I believe is super important in finding your voice, and I talked about it a little bit in this journal writing. It can be really hard to just throw out all the rules and just let the writing flow without worrying about all these technical things. But it's such an important thing to learn in writing, because you'll have plenty of chances to go back and fine-tune and grammatically make everything beautiful but you have to be able to allow yourself to write poorly before you can start writing better. And it takes courage to break the rules. It takes courage to throw them out and to just write whatever comes into your mind, or just write fluently without worrying about the rules. And the reason why I think that is such a difficult thing is because it leaves you so vulnerable. And this is something that I believe that any writer will tell you. The reason why being a writer is such a hard thing and such a terrifying thing is because it's like you're putting your heart on a plate and giving it to the world, and you have to just kind of let them interpret it or whatever, however they will, and that's a really scary thing. But it requires a lot of courage, and the writers that I know are some of the most courageous people that I know, because they are able to allow themselves to be vulnerable. And that is what rings true in an author's voice, is vulnerability. So, how do you become vulnerable with your voice? I think there is one factor in creating vulnerability in your voice, and that is you have to be writing from your heart. You have to be writing from your passion. If you're not writing about something that you're passionate about, stop. You're not going to find your voice that way, because you don't really care about it. But if you are writing from your soul, this is like the soul deep writing, that's when your voice is going to really shine, because it really matters to you. Now, I talked about this in my resonance segment. I talked about J.K. Rowling and how her writing Harry Potter had really affected me during a great time of loss for me. And it was because she was writing about loss too, and the fact that she'd actually experienced that loss made Harry Potter's experience of that loss ring really true with me, and therefore it resonated with me. That's the thing with finding your voice. If your voice isn't organically vulnerable, it's not going to ring true to your readers. And the way to make it an organic vulnerability is to be writing about things that really matter to you. And really, what's the point of writing if it doesn't really matter to you? Because it's just so much dang work. So, anyway, that I think is a huge key. And another thing, a way to really exercise that ability to be vulnerable is journal writing, because nobody's going to read it yet. You know, nobody's going to be looking through your journals, and that's just for you, and therefore that's a great place to start allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and be okay with it being really terrifying for a while, because it's scary. It is, but it's so worth it, because you're becoming secure within yourself as a writer, and it bleeds into other areas of your life too. If you can stick your heart out for the world to mock, or whatever they're going to do to it, you become pretty tough-skinned and pretty brave in the rest of your life as well. So anyway, those are my tips on finding your voice as a writer. I hope they're helpful. Again, I hopefully I said this before, but you can find, look it up and I'm sure find any kind of different path to finding your voice. Everyone has their own philosophy. This is just mine. So I hope that you find it helpful. I hope that it works for you, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks for stopping by.